The Travel Transformation Podcast is proud to be partnered with Give the Goodness Global, an amazing global outreach project helping families in need all over Southeast Asia and beyond. Please check them out at Instagram.com/Give the Goodness Global today. And now on to the podcast episode.
Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, where we talk all things travel and all things transformation, exploring the life-changing potential of solo travel, intentional travel, and location-independent working. Whether you're an aspiring digital nomad or simply wish to boost your confidence through epic travel experiences, I'm here to motivate and inspire you to go after all your wildest dreams. I'm Jessica Grace Coleman, author, certified travel coach, founder of the Travel Transformation Company, and your host for the Travel Transformation Podcast. Travel changed my life. Now let's change yours. You ready? Let's go. Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, where we talk all things travel and all things transformation. My name is Jessica Grace Coleman and I'm your host. And today I'm talking to Design Her Travel podcast creator and host, Kim Anderson. We decided to do a podcast swap. So she interviewed me for her Design Her Travel podcast, and then I interviewed her for the Travel Transformation Podcast. So if you want to hear my interview, definitely go and check out her podcast. Well, you should check it out anyway, because she interviews some amazing people and tells some incredible stories. And I'll put the link to that in the show notes. So in this episode, we discuss Kim's love for the ocean and all things boats, her podcast, Design Her Podcast, which I had the honor of being a guest on, as I said, the notion of a global citizen and what that means to her, using travel to step outside your comfort zone, and much, much more. Kim and I recorded our podcast episodes one after the other, so we were on Zoom for quite a while, before and after recording too, because we had so much in common and so much to talk about. But we had so much fun talking that the time just flew by. I love her mission, I love the way she sees the world, and I really enjoyed this conversation. So let's get to it. Hi, Kim. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited.
No problem. Okay, I think we should just give the listeners a bit of context here. So I have just gone on your brilliant podcast, Design Her Travel, and you're now coming on mine. So thank you so much for agreeing to this swap. I think it's a really great idea because I think our missions are very much aligned, as I mentioned on your podcast. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. So to start with, please can you give me and my listeners a bit of background info on you? So where you're from, where you live now, if that's different, and a little bit about your story so far.
Yeah, sure. So I was raised in Middle America on a small rural community on a family farm where I think my dad might be the fourth generation on the same land. And so I grew up in a tiny, tiny, tiny little town. I did not see the ocean until I was probably about 12 when my parents took a very quick holiday to Florida one year. And yet I have sailed around the world now since then. And so I lived as a global citizen for most of my adult life. I moved to Hawaii after university, fell in love with the ocean. And that took me on a very fabulous journey where I pretty much became a global citizen.
I love that. I'm going to ask you about the global citizen bit in a little while. But you mentioned the ocean there. And I know this is a huge part of your life now, but you said you didn't see it until you were 12. Is that right? So do you think that's why it's such a big part of your life? Because you didn't see it for so long? Was it sort of this huge moment when you did see it? Or why do you love it so much?
Honestly, it feels like it's a match for my soul. When I'm in the ocean at the beach, I feel a peace and a serenity unlike I feel anywhere else. Like water is the element of the earth that just really soothes me. And it's interesting. I've lived on many islands in my life at this point, and a lot of people talk about getting island fever when they're on an island. They can't go anywhere. They can't do anything. And I am the exact opposite. When I'm on an island and I look out into the horizon and I see ocean forever, I think there's infinite possibilities to go anywhere. And so it's just the freedom and the joy and being in that element of nature is just such a passion of mine.
I love that. And there's so many studies, isn't there, on like the power of green spaces, but the power of blue spaces as well. Like there's just something about water nature in general, but water as well, that I feel the same. I'm more of a lake person. Don't know why, than the ocean, but that is like I think one of my dreams is to have, like a lake house, like right on the lake. That view is just something so soothing, so calming. I don't even have to be on the water, like you say, just looking out at it. Going on a boat is something I don't do a lot, but when I do, it's that kind of just that feeling of freedom, like you say. And there is just something magical about water. There's just no getting away from it. So you mentioned there, obviously, your love of the ocean. And you had a career in the private yacht industry. Is that right? Can you tell me about that? What were you doing and how did you get into it?
So it was a little bit of a journey to get to the private yacht world. I had worked for quite a number of years. My first open ocean crossing was actually an outrigger canoe in Hawaii. I did the World Championship long distance outrigger canoe race, and that was my first open ocean crossing. And so once that happened, I have been on boats ever since. Like, it was just it fueled this fire within me. And so when I traveled the world the first time, I left and I was gone for like almost 3 years, and I worked on the Great Barrier Reef. I did some yacht deliveries. Basically, my visa was running out when I was in New Zealand. I'd been there for almost a year, and I met someone there, and he's a very dear friend to this day. And he helped me remember that I always knew I would sail around the world. Like, I don't know how I always knew this. I didn't even have a conscious awareness of this dream. I just knew there was an instant moment where we were in conversation and I went, oh, yeah, I'm going to sail around the world. I knew that. It was just dawned on me. And so as my visa was running out and I went to Australia, I was like, I'm going to sail out of the country. Like, I knew I was going to Australia. It was less about exploring Australia and more about like, okay, I'm going to sail out of the country. Like, this is it. And so I made it my mission. So I did some races on the Swan River in Perth. And then I came back over and I did yacht deliveries. And then I worked in the Great Barrier. And then I met up with a family to do a regatta from Darwin to Indonesia. And so I had just been doing it. I worked on the Nepali coast in Kauai when I returned. I actually had my son. I have a son who's now 17, and he was born on Kauai. And we did this thing where there's sometimes a little bit of a custody battle or a custody issue or a custody thing that happens. And so it was like, okay, now I have someone to support. He's living with his dad. And so what do I want to do? And that's when I literally I remembered seeing one private yacht when I was in Indonesia, and I did like a quick Google search. And a couple of weeks later, I was taking the course and I worked on private yachts for like 10 years probably. And so I managed the interior. I managed the interior of the vessel, and eventually I managed the money and did the hiring and all of these other facets. But basically, I was in charge of the interior and the private yachts on different private yachts around the world.
That's so cool. I love the whole thing about the inherent knowing that is what you were going to do, even if you didn't know that's what you knew, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs and people like say this kind of thing, like they've always known they were meant for something different, but they didn't know what that meant. I've always felt the same. I've always sort of known inherently that I wouldn't end up in like a 9-to-5 job, or, I would do something a bit different to the norm or to what society expects of you. I don't know how I knew it. I don't know what I was expecting that to be, but I've always had that sort of inner knowing. And I sort of never really talked about it or sort of put words to it until I started listening to all these podcasts about all these amazing people and them saying they had the exact same feeling, which is very bizarre, but I find it amazing. And I love that you had that feeling, but it also had a very specific thing about it. Like, you've actually knew what it meant. So I love that so much. So when you first got into the boating and you said you took the course and you Googled it and then you went and did it, is that the kind of person you are? Like, personality wise, do you decide on something and then just go after it? Or have you always been like that?
It depends. I have been such a free spirit for my entire life. Sometimes I've realized now there were moments where I allowed myself to be a free spirit where I didn't make intentional choices. I just rolled with the punches in life. And that is great. I have had an extraordinary life. I also am aware that there are times when I rolled with the punches where I didn't have to make a choice. And so now that I have that awareness, I'm like, okay, when it comes to my professional career, I've always been able to like okay, I can pivot in a moment. I can make that change when it comes to my career. When it comes to things in my personal life, I've sometimes been slower to make that change. So when it comes to work, I'm like, boom, I got this. When it comes to personal life, sometimes I drag my feet a little longer than I should.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that. Definitely. Now, you said earlier that you consider yourself a global citizen, and I love that term. So can you tell me what that term means to you?
Yes. So that term for me, I have always been home wherever I am. And the thing I love about that is, sure, there are times in life where I've recognized that the first time I was in Asia, I'm like, oh, wow, this is such a foreign land. But I found my home within that. And so for me, it really is being home wherever you are. And I've moved about the world. I live wherever I am. I'm not there just as a holiday or just to live my same life in a different location. I love how people do laundry, how they eat as a family, how they gather in community, the way that we are as humans within our communities anywhere in the world. And so I feel for me, being a global citizen is recognizing that we're all humans. We all have the same desires. We want love, we want community, we want support. And so sharing and being in those things around the world for me is being a global citizen. It's not about borders or location. It's about recognizing the humanity of the person in front of you.
Could not agree with that more. And, so many people, they sort of know that this concept that we're all the same, like we all have very similar fears, very similar things holding us back. But it's not until you travel and actually interact with these people and live with them, like you say, as a local, you really, really feel that. And deep down that it's completely true. Like no matter where you're from, no matter what your upbringing, we're all so similar. And that personally, I love that part of travel. Like it's one of the main reasons I travel. So you have your own podcast, which I mentioned before, Design Her Travel. And like I say, I think we have very similar missions. So I love the kind of people you have on there, the stories they tell. And as a podcast host, I'm just really intrigued generally about this. What made you want to start a podcast? And is it something you've always wanted to do or, wanted to do for a while? Do you find it comes naturally to you? Because it doesn't come naturally to me. So I just, tell me about your experience with starting Design Her Travel.
Have I always wanted to start a podcast? I think the answer to that would be no. But it is something where when I left my yachting career, and I became land-based, and I was trying to decide, okay, what am I going to do at this point in time in life? And so a friend of mine and we decided we would start a podcast because yachting was still relatively new. This is like pre-Below Deck days. People hadn't really heard of it. It wasn't new, but it was definitely more off the radar than it is now. And this was in quite a while ago now. But the tech was so overwhelming at the time. It was just like, it felt like this mountain of hurdles to overcome. And so we did a couple of interviews, but it really fizzled out. I was just like, the learning curve on this is like way too great. I do not have the dedication at the moment. And so came, this time last year where I really was missing my community. I'm currently in Illinois. My son is now off in school. And so now I am back into the world of like, okay, I can explore, I can move about again. I can do the things that really fuel me on that soul level. And so I missed my community, and I wanted to create a community of people that were like-minded and had a passion for inspiring others and really lived these extraordinary lives. And I wanted to share those stories with people. And so that was really the genesis. It was semi-selfish to start. I missed community and I wanted to create that in my life. And so the podcast was a great way to do that. Does it come naturally? I can have a conversation with probably a brick wall at this point in time in life. I really genuinely love people. I love connecting with people, and everyone in life is so interesting. Everyone has such a beautiful story to tell. And so for that facet of it, I think, yes, that part comes naturally. Is it the promotional, the back end stuff of it? That's a little bit of, not my favorite thing, but a part of the journey. Yeah, that's part of it. So people, yes, the back end, maybe not so much.
Yeah, totally with you on the back end of it, definitely. Yeah, but your love of people and your love of telling their stories and having conversations, it definitely comes through on your podcast. And having just been interviewed by you, I can say that it definitely felt like I was just hanging out and talking with a friend. For someone who finds this kind of thing still quite scary, even though I make myself do it these days instead of running away from it, and you made it very, very comfortable and easy and just really fun. So I just want to put that out there and encourage everyone to go and listen to your podcast, because you have some great people on there telling amazing stories. I actually had a question about this because I just listened to the one you recorded a podcast with your son, which I loved, talking about your sort of past trips and things. And I actually recorded an episode quite early on in my podcast talking with my brother, like reminiscing about our past holidays and trips and things. So I love that. What made me laugh though is when you were talking about the train trip you went on, because he was a big Thomas the Tank Engine fan and he didn't remember any of the train. Like it made me think of it, because when my brother's 3 years older than me and he remembered a lot more than I did. But I think even though I can't remember a lot of the specifics, I think the whole idea, I kind of went into this a bit on your podcast as well, the whole idea of travel that I learned as a kid growing up, that it is possible to just jump on a plane or jump in your car and or jump on a train and have this amazing trip. Even if you don't remember everything, you kind of know you went on it, and you hear other people's memories and stories about it. And I think that's definitely shaped me and my love of travel. So I know some people think like, oh, why bother taking kids anywhere because I don't remember it. But I think it does. I think somewhere deep down inside, it sows a little seed. And that definitely happened with me. Is it important to you that your son has the same love of travel? Does he have a love of travel?
I think it's important for me to show him I'm here on this planet and this incarnation to show people the world, whatever facet that comes, whether it's through conversation, whether it's through literally taking them someplace in the world, whether it's presenting a new ideology that someone may or may not have. For me, it was important for my son to understand that anything is possible. People are people no matter where you are. We all have, again, those same fears, those same loves, those same joys, and that you don't have to be stuck in life. You have the freedom to choose and the freedom to move. And he's lived quite an extraordinary life as far as like he was raised on Kauai in Hawaii. Like that's where his dad lives. That's where he was raised. That's where he was born. And he has traveled with me in many, many places. His first journey solo, trans-Pacific, he was 5. He turned 5 on the 6th of June and was on a plane probably the next day and flew from Hawaii to San Diego by himself. And so obviously they have the escorts and whatnot, but he has moved so much and spent so much time. We have stayed in different places. We visited with family. We have lived an extraordinary life of movement. All he wants in life is roots. All he wants at this moment is, it's one of those, I don't know if it's necessarily the grass is always greener or just having the experience of knowing what it's like to move around the world. He wants to be still. He wants to live within a radius of where our family farm is. He wants to put down roots. He wants to have dogs and cats and animals and a farm. So he's always been very connected to the earth. And I think that shows as he's learning what it is important to him in life and how to create that. His really is a desire to put roots down.
And I think that's important to mention, because I think we mentioned on your podcast how there's seasons in your business where you're going to be really busy. You're going to really go for it. And then you'll need to step back and we're talking about time management and stuff like that, but it's the same in life in general. And I'm kind of in a similar place at the moment. I have so many people, so many friends who are constantly on the road, constantly traveling. And that's just too much for me as an introvert, it's just draining. It's very exhausting, and it kind of takes the fun out and the adventure out of it for me personally. So I'm in the sort of season at the moment of trying to figure out where I want my base to be. All my stuff's in storage at the moment. So I need to find somewhere in England probably that I want to live, and then go on smaller, shorter trips. Travel's always going to be what I'm passionate about. but being constantly on the road, it's just not for everyone, and it's not for everyone in every moment of their life. Like we go through seasons, and like you say, he wants roots. I totally understand the wanting to get cats and dogs. I'm a huge animal fan, but I've sort of been putting it off because of all the traveling. So yeah, I could totally understand that part of it as well. We kind of mentioned this before, but you say that your mission is to help people step into their bravery and design the life of their dreams, and that travel is a vehicle to help someone break out of their comfort zones and into that life. And our messages are so similar. So I really love this. So why is this mission and this message so important to you? And what have you done personally to break outside your comfort zone?
Sorry for the interruption, but I just have to tell you about Jessica Grace Coleman's new book, Intentional Travel Transformation. Boost your confidence, conquer your fears, and finally become the person you've always wanted to be, which is out now. This book is part memoir, part practical guide to help you transform yourself and your life through travel. Learn about Jessica's own tale of travel transformation, read unique transformation stories from the travel buddies she's met on the road, and make your way through her travel transformation framework, a method you can follow to create your very own bespoke travel transformation strategy. Your roadmap you can use to incorporate intentional travel into all your future trips. So, have you packed your bags yet? Because it's time to flip the script on your life and transform through travel. Get Intentional Travel Transformation now from Amazon, or head to www.traveltransformationcoach.com/books for more info. And now let's get back to the Travel Transformation Podcast.
The mission is so important for me because I have gone through, even very recently, a period of stagnation, a period of being settled, but not in I'm choosing to be settled, but being settled in a season of life that feels stuck. It feels like there's, an overwhelming amount of hurdles to break through in order to create that life of freedom. And so I understand how important movement is in life. And I know that that doesn't mean traveling the world on a continuous basis is the answer for people. I just recognize at this point in time in life, movement is important. And that is stepping into your bravery. That is doing the thing that scares you. That is facing your fear, whether it's, as we have spoken about, just one tiny little thing at a time. Doing those things over a period of time creates great change. And so the movement through travel is sort of like a warp speed ability to break out of your comfort zone and to look at life a little bit differently, to allow yourself to create the identity of who you really are, but you might be afraid to live when you are in that place of stuck or sedentary. And so for me, it's been a lot of breaking through my own mental barriers of what's holding me back. It's been getting really down and dirty with my own self in ways that I'm not living my truest value. Like, where am I not being authentic in who I am? Where am I not honoring what it is that I truly am and desire in life? Where am I pretending to fit in or to be just because that seems to be the expectation? And it's been interesting going from being a global citizen and living all around the world to coming back to the place I was raised. It has been very challenging to be truly me in a place where people have an expectation or a knowing of who I was. And so I found myself sort of, buried under these expectations that I didn't even know were there, but I allowed myself to slowly live into them until I found myself in a place where I was like, who in the world am I even being right now? This is not me. And so piece by piece, I've just allowed those things to break away. And I'm just like, screw it. I am not messing around with that anymore. And so it's been a process. It's been getting really real. It's finding things about myself that I don't really like. And so having to change those. It's being intentional and having a conscious awareness of those things that I no longer desire to live or be.
You said like other people's expectations, the weight of other people's expectations on us,
Mm.
especially people we've known forever. You can't discount that. That is such a massive thing that stops you from doing certain things because you know you're expected to behave a certain way or speak a certain way or look a certain way or go after a certain career or whatever it may be. And I find that, so many people don't go after their dreams literally because they're worried about what other people think, like other people in their life. And when you think about it that way, it's absolutely ridiculous, but it is what happens. So I could totally relate with that. You were talking about thinking, how am I being inauthentic? What are the things I need to work on? Did you do any kind of exercises around this? Do you journal, meditate? Were there any certain books or podcasts that sort of helped you with this? Like, how do you even start looking at this? You said it's sort of a process and it's bit by bit, but like, were there any specific exercises or things you did to get there?
Yeah. So I have spent the last couple of years, probably 2.5 years, maybe, taking different courses. And I started out with business courses, but then I realized it was really spirituality and mindset. I've always been an extremely spiritual person, not a religious person, but a very spiritual person. However, I didn't have a regular practice to be in tune with what that is or what that even meant for me. And so it really has been developing my own practice through, I've taken a few courses and have a morning routine that's very important. It really is that time when I tune in with myself, I touch base and find that unity within me and that unity within us all. I have a morning meditation practice, I journal, I do listen to podcasts, but I have practiced. I've done hypnotherapy and some EFT tapping. I use those practices. Hypnotherapy is more something that's come up recently, so it's a newer addition to my practice, but it's really getting down to working with the subconscious level and learning that I am able to retrain or reprogram my mind. And so again, it's that conscious awareness and that intentional activity of, okay, I'm finding a barrier in my physical world. So where is that in my mental state? And how can I break through that? And so sometimes it does take hypnotherapy and EFT tapping, but the key to keeping me grounded and keeping me connected is my morning meditation practice. It is the one non-negotiable. If I don't have time in the day to do all of the things in my morning practice, the meditation is the thing that I do not compromise on at all.
And do you use any apps or anything to help with that? Or is it just something you do yourself for the meditation?
I have some guided meditations that I use from a teacher Kathy Heller. She took her podcasting class and her Abundant Ever After course, which is really a phenomenal mindset course. It is really, really tapping into the abundance in the world in general. And so I use her guided meditation sometimes, and other times I use Insight Timer and just use some sort of sound and no guidance or no words, but sometimes the sound allows me to tap in.
I love that. It's something that I've always been meaning to get into, and I have tried Insight Timer and things like that, but I think it's like with any habit. I just need to like form the habit and stick to it. So I really would like to start doing that in the mornings in particular. On your podcast, you asked me if I had a book that sort of changed my life or that I really love. Do you have a favorite book or a favorite author?
I have. It's so, if I like glance over my computer screen, I see nothing but books. So I'm a little bit of a book junkie. To be honest, a book that I constantly refer to and pick up is The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I have read that book a million times in life, and sometimes I just read a couple of the segments. I have multiple copies on my shelf because it's a book that I give away often. There are so many books that have touched me in life and given me practical advice or some sort of spiritual wisdom. The book I'm currently digesting is Anatomy of the Spirit by Caroline Myss, and it's really beautiful in a way that we touch within our energy centers and how to heal ourselves. And so I love that at the moment, but The Prophet is something that I give as gifts and pass out all the time.
I love that. I love the idea of buying copies with the intention of giving them out as gifts, because I mean, books are always the best gifts anyway. But yeah, if it's got a message or something that means something to you, it makes that gift so much more personal. And I love that you have them on your shelf ready to give out. I need to start doing that. That's amazing. So I believe that next year you're going to start leading wellness retreats and small group trips. Can you tell me about this? Because it sounds really exciting. Where are you going to go and what will be the main focus of these trips?
Well, the destinations, I am working on those at the moment. I haven't really solidified exactly where that is. So it kind of touches base into the journey of self is really the greatest journey that we can take. And so obviously, you and I both have a mission of travel as a transformative tool to journey into ourselves in all reality. And so I've never been one to be on the main path in life. I haven't really gone to the destinations that are, the main backpacker route or the places some people have heard of. They will be in places where you get a little out of your comfort zone. You'll be able to touch base with locals. I am incorporating possibly some sort of, there will be a give back to that. So we'll spend a day where we get to give back to the community that we're in. It will have meditation, exploration, freedom, and a journey into yourself.
I love that. That sounds amazing. Watch this space to hear more about that. Great. And I asked you where your favorite places in the world are. And I know it's so hard to choose. You said a small Pacific island in Indonesia called Rinca.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the Pacific at sunset. I love a good sunset. And the Napali coast on Kauai. So can you tell me why these places are so special to you?
It's interesting that, I didn't really remember. I mean, I wrote those obviously, but I didn't remember that I had picked 3 places, islands, or with, I picked all water spaces. I mean, I love Italy so much and feel at home there. So it's funny that I chose 3 water spaces. So Rinca was amazing it was so remote. It was so wild. We anchored just off the shore and I swam to the beach and the water was phenomenal. Like the coral reefs were amazing. It was unlike, and I had traveled the world and I'm I love free diving. And so I'd seen a lot of the ocean, but I had never seen a coral reef this healthy. And so I was mind blown at that. And here I am lying on the beach and there's Komodo dragons on the beach. And so I'm like, I look over and I'm just like, there's like a ton of Komodo dragons, like a ton of them. And then I'm like, I know they're poisonous. Is this going to kill? Like I have zero knowledge of danger. I'm like, okay, again, maybe a little research might have been useful, but it was totally fine in the end. And so as I swim back to the vessel and I'm sitting on the deck and the sun's going down and I look over and at the end of the rocks, there are monkeys at the end of the rocks on this point, and they are using rocks and they are bashing these mollusks off of the rocks and eating them. And so there's Komodo dragons on the reef, there's healthy coral reef, and there's monkeys eating mollusks off of the rocks. And I'm just like, oh, and no one, not a soul around. There was no traffic, no people, no nothing. This is a completely deserted island. And I was like, okay, this is cool. This is exploration. This is travel. Yeah. So and the Napali coast can kind of feel like that, although there's a lot more people there now, but it's a very tropical paradise. The landscape itself, no matter how many times I have seen it, it can still bring me to tears and its beauty. It's just one of those places where you're like, how does this exist? Like, this is so beautiful. How does this exist in life? And thank you, Creator, because this is mind-blowing. And I've seen grown men that are just like these staunch, solid, like you would look at them like completely not emotional, like bring tears to their eyes in the beauty. And there's just something really very magical about that place. So
wow, I love that. I also love the idea of you looking over and just realizing you're just chilling with these Komodo dragons. That's not
I'm not sure. Maybe not my brightest moment. I was like, okay, do they really? I mean, they're huge, like 6 feet long. They're massive. Like they're really, really big. And so they're especially big when you're lying on the beach and like they're parallel to you, I'm just like, oh, hey. So,
That's amazing. I mean, it's not your normal Tuesday afternoon or whatever, is it? Like that's like something
no, not at all.
Very special. You'll always remember. I love that. Okay. So do you have any places, countries or oceans left on your bucket list?
Yes, absolutely. As a traveler, my list gets larger instead of smaller. So Bhutan is on the top of my list right now, one of the top. Kazakhstan, I haven't been to Jordan yet either, so it's on my list. There's a place on the island of Borneo that I would like to explore. There's this river that you can go up. And so there's lots of places, but I think at the top, Bhutan is sort of like, I've always been, had a desire to go there since they have what is it? The gross domestic happiness is how they measure their element of the country. As soon as I read that years ago, I was like, okay, that's my spot. I'm going there. They're measuring their happiness. I'm down.
Exactly. Yeah, I listened to a podcast. It used to be called Jits into the Sunset. It's like the Adventure Mindset podcast. And they went to Bhutan and they do YouTube videos and things. So they were invited to make a video there. And they happened to be staying in the house of like the previous president or prime minister or whatever they have or something. And they were like just talking about the happiness. And I was just like, this sounds like an incredible place. Like, it's like, and it's one of the places that a lot of people haven't heard of, or, they don't know anything about it. And so I love that that's on your list. I think I might have to add that to my list as well too. Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe you've got a guide coming out about traveling the world for free. Is this right? Because I think a lot of people will be interested in this.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like, people think that travel could be the most expensive thing in the world, and not everyone's aware that there are lots of ways to explore the world and it costs next to nothing. Obviously you have to be able to get there, but many times you can get room and board covered. And so I've created a guide on the 5 ways to travel the world for free. And there might be an extra bonus one in there too. And so, yes, so I'll share the link with you and you can sign up for that and get that great info.
Great. Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes. And I have 2 last quick questions. So the first one is, where can people find and follow you online? And I'll put those in the show notes as well. And then the last one is there anything else you want to mention or any last message you want to get across about travel or anything else before we go?
I think for me, the thing that I hope people take away from your message and your podcast and my podcast, and from people that are out there living these extraordinary lives, is know that you too can do that. They're not special. We're all equal, and we've all just chosen to face the fear and take the leap of faith and do the thing that requires bravery. It just takes 2 seconds of courage to completely change your life, and know that we are all capable of that. And the thing that I have found through travel is that the world and its people are inherently kind. So you will always have support. You will always have friends around, and you will always have what you need when you move about the world. So it's way less scary than you might think it would be.
I love that so much. And the 2 seconds of courage thing really resonated with me, because I always think, like, yes, if you look at the whole picture, you're going to go solo traveling for a month, something, whatever your goal is, it's scary. But if you boil it right down, all you need is those 2 seconds of courage to press enter on the ticket you want to buy. Or, it's literally getting your card out and filling in a few boxes and saying, yes, I want to buy this thing. And obviously there's a lot more stuff to it. But if you can just get through those 2 seconds of courage to go and get that thing started, like start it rolling, then that's all you really need. And then after that, if you've already booked the ticket, you're going to make sure everything else gets done and happens. So I love that whole 2 seconds of bravery thing. I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind if you're wanting to do something big, but it's scary. Like, what's the smallest thing you can break it down to? And can you just have that courage for 2 seconds, do the thing, like the physical thing, and get it done? So I love that so much. And you're on Instagram, I believe. What's your handle on Instagram?
Yes, it is at Seafaring Wanderer, which does not match the podcast. I am totally aware of that. So that might be something that's coming to change. But at the moment, it is Seafaring Wanderer. So it's SEAFARING Wanderer, WANDRER. And also the Design Her Travel podcast on Facebook. And so you can connect with me on either of those places and the Design Her Travel podcast.
Yeah, great. And we'll put the links to the podcast as well. And like I say, I really enjoyed listening to the episodes I've listened to so far. So everyone go follow, rate, review, all that good stuff. And yeah, that's all my questions. So thank you so much for coming on today. I know we've had sort of a double whammy here, so it's been like a lot of time, but it's actually gone quite quickly for me. I really enjoyed talking to you about all your stories. And like I say, we've got very similar outlooks. So it's always nice to connect with someone who has a very similar mission in life. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It has been a joy. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I love seeing people living their bravery out and around the world, just doing their thing and inspiring others. It's the thing that brings me the greatest joy. So thank you.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Travel Transformation Podcast with me, Jessica Grace Coleman. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could please subscribe, rate and review, and spread the word, because it's my mission to help as many people as possible to flip the script on their lives and transform through travel. And remember, life is short, so let's make sure it's nothing short of amazing. Until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.